The Widow's Bay season finale didn't just give us answers, it shifted the entire mystery. And honestly, I've rewatched parts of this finale twice now, and a few details keep pulling at me. Because the answers we got, they raised something even darker underneath them. Yes, we learned the truth about the Warren bloodline, and the storm finally ended. But somehow, I walked away with even more questions than I had before. Because the biggest clues in this episode suggest the curse is more complex than we realized. And several details from the finale have me wondering if we completely misunderstood how Widow's Bay actually works. Not from who the last descendant is, but to what the island actually wants. And I am genuinely concerned for Evan. So today I'm breaking down 5 clues from the Widow's Bay finale that could tell us where this story is heading in season 2. I'll also be discussing some unanswered questions I have at the end of this video. But before I get started, let me introduce myself if you're new here. And if you're not new here, then welcome back. My name is Brandy, and I realize that you could be on any channel in the world, but you're right here with me, and I really do appreciate that. So please go ahead and like this video. It really does help the channel out, and I greatly appreciate it. And also subscribe to the channel if you do enjoy watching TV show breakdowns. Clue number 1 is Evan witnessing the sacrifice of Kenny. This one detail from the finale feels much bigger than it appears on the surface. When Evan and his friends end up in the basement with the electric chair, Kenny shows up to chase them away. Then PJ locks Kenny inside, not sure if that was a mistake or not, but Evan immediately tries to get the door open to free Kenny, but he can't. And behind the closed door, we hear Kenny saying, "Something is happening." Then we hear him scream. And then moments later, the storm ends. And when Evan finally gets that door open, Kenny is gone. Now here's the question though, why was Evan even there? Because the show could have had Kenny disappear anywhere. Instead, it specifically places Evan on the other side of that door. Evan is the last person to see Kenny alive. Evan is the last person to hear him speak. And Evan is the person who helplessly hears the sacrifice happen. And I think that was intentional because at this exact moment, Tom is at Ruth's house and he just learned that Evan is the last Warren descendant, which means the finale may have quietly positioned Evan to witness something incredibly important. The island didn't just take Kenny, it made sure Evan saw the cost. For generations, the Warren family appears to have been connected to the sacrifices made in order to keep the curse under control. And now, before Evan even really knows who he is, he has witnessed a sacrifice. Almost like the island is giving him his first lesson. Because if the storm truly stopped when Kenny was taken, then Evan now understands something most people in Widow's Bay may not understand. Sometimes the island takes a life and gives something back. And that's a dangerous thing for the last Warren descendant to learn. Which brings us to clue number 2, Tom discarding the brooch. Now this one detail from the finale stood out to me as well. After learning that Evan is the last Warren descendant, Tom takes the Warren family brooch and he throws it into the water. At first, it feels like Tom is simply just trying to put all of this behind him somehow. But what if he's actually making a huge mistake? Because this isn't Richard Warren's brooch. It was Sarah Warren's brooch. And let's not forget that Sarah was the person who recognized Richard's darkness and she fled with his children and she tried to protect them. And all of this happened, of course, after Sarah gave the brooch to Frances Warren, Richard's daughter. And Frances happened to be the one child that survived. And that really is an interesting detail. Because what if the brooch wasn't just a family heirloom? What if it symbolized protection? And this detail really caught my attention because stories rarely keep an object in the same family for years without it having a bigger symbolic meaning. And in mythology, one of the most common things attached to heirlooms isn't power, it's protection. So this brooch stayed within the surviving branch of the Warren family for generations until it eventually ended up with Ruth. And now Tom throws it away. He throws it away in the bay. And almost immediately afterward, the church bell rings 8 times. And that timing feels way too deliberate to ignore. So what if Sarah wasn't just passing down jewelry? What if she was passing down protection? Because if that's true, Tom may have unknowingly thrown away the one thing that has been protecting the Warren bloodline for generations, and now that protection is gone. I suspect that brooch will reappear in season 2. Either Tom is going to go looking for the brooch, or the brooch is going to go looking for Evan. Now, moving on to clue number 3. One of the creepiest moments in the finale comes when Dale discovers the old orientation film about the sacrifices. Now, the film itself, it is disturbing enough, but what really caught my attention was the way it looked, because it didn't feel ancient. I mean, obviously, it wasn't from the Richard Warren era back in the 1700s, because they didn't have film reels back then, because the reel, it isn't in black and white. When I think about that orientation reel, and when I think about Widow's Bay, how it feels like it's stuck around the same time period. The technology, the equipment, even parts of the town's infrastructure. It's all modern enough to function, but it always feels like decades behind the outside world. And that got me wondering, what if the island isn't trapped in the past? What if it's slowly catching up to the present? Because if Richard made the pact back in 1702, then why doesn't Widow's Bay still look like 1702? And why doesn't it look like present day? What we know is that the roads evolved. They have electricity now. They have newer technology because we see computers. They're not up to date, but they do have computers. So that orientation film, it really gave us something we really never had before. Evidence that the sacrifice system has continued adapting over time. Somebody made the film, somebody updated the message for a new generation, which suggests that the island didn't stop developing centuries ago. It just kept going. And if that's true, maybe sacrifices aren't just keeping the island alive. Maybe they're helping the island grow. Maybe every major sacrifice cycle allows the island to move a step closer to the modern world, which makes those 8 bell tolls at the end of the episode even more unsettling. What if the island is hungry again, but it's hungry to evolve, it's hungry to modernize? Because the more I think about it, the less Widow's Bay feels like a place trapped in the past. It feels like a place that's been slowly updating itself for the past 300 years. And clue number 4 is the mold on the food.
This is covered in mold, everyone.
Okay.
Now, there's a theory that's been floating around online for weeks now, and some of you even mentioned in my comment section that the biggest threat to the island is the mold, the fungus. And I'll be honest, I wasn't completely sold on that theory at first, but after this finale, I think we really need to take it a lot more seriously, because this isn't the first time the show has drawn our attention to mold. Earlier this season, we saw mold hidden behind a wallpaper in a hotel. We saw mold appearing inside Patricia's self-help book. And now in the season finale, chaos erupts in the shelter when people discover mold growing on their food. And at some point, these stop feeling like random background details and they start feeling really intentional. And then there's the true sight mushroom, because while mushrooms and mold aren't exactly the same thing, they both belong to the fungal kingdom. And that's interesting because the true sight mushroom appears to alter perception and allow people to see or experience things that they normally couldn't. So what if the mold isn't just a sign of decay? What if it's connected to the island's influence? Now, I'm not saying that the mold is literally mind-controlling people, but I do think the finale confirms something important. The mold isn't just set dressing. It isn't just a background detail. It is part of the mystery. And the writers have gone out of their way to place it in multiple locations throughout the season. Because if fungus is influencing perception, behavior, or people's connection to the island, then the mold we've been seeing all season may be much more important than it first appeared. And the question I'm left with is, if the fungus is spreading, what else is spreading with it? And clue number 5 is another time distortion detail. Now, this one line from the finale immediately caught my attention. It's when Rosemary tells the sheriff,
"Let me do a whole genealogy on Ruth." Do you know how long that took?
and at first this sounds like a throwaway line, but from our perspective as the audience, it didn't seem like it took very long at all for Rosemary to do that report. In fact, I was wondering how she did it so quickly. And we've seen several other clues throughout the season that hint at this time distortion or some type of time warping going on. We saw that Patricia previously claimed that she was 28 years old. Shep listed his age as 37. And one thing I've noticed all season is that the island feels strangely disconnected from the modern world. Yet the people of Widows Bay, they don't seem to really notice this. We see that the visitors that come from the mainland, they arrive to the island, they have modern phones and technology. In this episode, we even saw that Evan's girlfriend had what looked like a smartphone when they were in the basement. But so many of the island's electronics and equipment and their aesthetics, they just feel like from an earlier era. So whatever is going on with this complex curse, it has created some kind of anchor point to this time period. And in my opinion, the whole time distortion element of this show is the biggest mystery. And now let's jump into the question section of this video. I have a question for you all. Did you predict that Evan would be the last descendant? I know I certainly did, and I did see a lot of you mention it as well in the comments. But drop an E down below if you predicted that Evan was the last descendant, or do you even believe that he is? Next question, is Ruth really dead? I am praying that she is not, because I loved her performance on this episode. She was so vibrant, so full of life, so funny to me, and I really want to see more of Ruth. Now, we did see that her body was moving after the sheriff shot her, and we do know that she's in really good health considering that she's 84 years old. But I would just love to see her have a conversation with Evan. And I would love for Evan to discover that Ruth is his grandmother. And another question I can't stop thinking about is, how do the sacrifices actually work? Like, for instance, Kenny, I'm assuming he's dead because we saw that the cellar doors were open. Is the entity really killing people, eating people, or are they just taking people somewhere else? And it seems like the Islanders should know that this is happening based on an orientation video that we saw, especially like an older person like Ruth. According to that orientation video, it seems like people were actually voting on the sacrifices or something to that effect. And I have a feeling that Ruth knows a lot more than she's actually putting on. And lastly, let's discuss a few things that I was definitely wrong about in my theories. I was wrong about the brooch. I thought the brooch was actually going to be in Tom's box that Evan was looking through when he found pictures of his mother, because it was a small jewelry box in there that could definitely fit a brooch. I was also wrong about speculating that Tom wasn't Evan's bio dad. That conversation that they had in season 1, episode 1, it was very elusive, so it had me thinking that maybe Tom wasn't Evan's dad, but it appears that Tom is definitely Evan's dad, unless we find out otherwise in future seasons, because again, the writers did leave that very ambiguous. And also, I thought this show was gonna be somewhat along the lines of a sci-fi mystery box show. But from what I've seen so far in season 1, this seems to be fully supernatural. And honestly, I'm not a huge supernatural fan, but I absolutely love this show. I cannot get enough of it, and I'm so glad that they are renewed for season 2. But nonetheless, guys, if you made it this far in the video, please do me a favor and drop me down some fire emojis down below. And as always, let me know what clues that I missed that you might have caught on to, and let me know any of your theories, any of your suspicions for season 2. As most of you know, I am covering from season 4, so make sure you check out those videos. And I will also be covering Silo when the next season drops on July 3rd. And that's all I have for you guys today. I hope you all stay safe out there. And until I see you next time, peace.